Okay. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. I'm your host, as always, Mike Murray. Today, I'm thrilled to speak with one of the finest coaches in American swimming, a fellow ASCA board member, Coach Jimmy Tierney from McKendree University. Welcome, Coach.
Mike, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
We're excited to have you on. You've really played an important role in American swimming over the last 3 decades, coaching both at the Division I level at Northwestern and now at Division II at McKendree, which you built from scratch, as well as coaching several swimming clubs, some national team appointments for U.S. teams at World University Games and other international meets. You've served proudly on the ASCA board. You continue to inspire the next generation of young coaches. I want to talk today about the role that the sport has played in your life and maybe talk a lot about some of the challenges that young coaches face. I know that it's near and dear to your heart to continue the tradition of great coaches in this country and around the world. And I think we should focus today primarily on some of those experiences we had as young coaches and some things that we would have done differently. But I do want to get started today with just a real basic question, and that's what impact has the sport of swimming played in your life?
Well, it's played a tremendous role and had a major impact throughout. And you know, I spent a lot of time when I was young, just not just swimming, but just absorbing the sport. And like most of us, when we were young, of course, getting caught up in the Olympic Games and all the heroes that we develop as we watch the games from when we were whatever 6, 8, 10, 12, etc. And fortunately, I grew up, well, first of all, I grew up in a family with swimmers. Now we had a large family, and my mom was well known in the Louisville area, just was just a recreational swimmer. And she would swim her mile a day, and as well as trying to raise a very, very large family. And I just grew up around aquatics, and Lakeside Swim Club in Louisville, Kentucky developed a really, really strong tradition of swimming. And Louisville itself did, to be honest. There was another club called Plantation Swim Club that probably had some even greater success, like in the 70s, and they hosted the last of the some of the unified swimming and diving nationals, believe it or not, back in the day. And I was a young kid running around helping to sell t-shirts and whatever, and see all my heroes and people in the pool with Doc Councilman and his swimmers there, and George Haynes and so forth. But anyway, I just grew up in a great, I think, environment, had a lot of tremendous mentors. And when I started coaching at Lakeside, well, first of all, I was under Denny Persley. That was just an unbelievable experience for me. But bam, we had Mary T. Maher and Tori Treese making the Olympic Games. And it was just this, to me, an amazing amount of success from a modest town, Louisville, Kentucky, modest sized team, maybe 160 to 180 swimmers or something like that, and mostly homegrown talent, So anyway, I just got caught up in it. And, from a relatively young age, I wanted to coach, and even did the summer league thing for a while and loved it. And, then once I got latched on to Lakeside as a assistant coach, it was, I've been going right for decades and haven't stopped yet.
Fair to say that the Lakeside Quarry Pool is one of the coolest training locations in the world?
It is. I can't imagine a better place to grow up or to visit. And it's the most unique setting that I've ever seen or experienced. And just the training part alone, the 50-meter 8-lane course is, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of the size of the entire body of water. And how many pools have a designated area for sunbathers on, on rafts, and, you'd swim up and down the pool and sort of be choking on, Hawaiian tropic or, coconut, oil, whatever. And just a very unique place, but it was a great place to grow up because when we were young, we would just stay there all day. Whether you were swimming once or twice, it didn't matter until you got a little bit older. Maybe you had to start working and so forth. But, we just lived there. And that was, a great thing, I think, developing, comfort in the water and all that kind of stuff. And, we'd be diving off the boards and trying to do 1.5s and, have fun with that. And so, yeah, it was just a terrific environment. And to see people rise up and have national success, and then of course it blew up when, Denny came in and then Bill Peak that followed him. And the level of coaching there was just unbelievable. And you're talking Hall of Famers, and both of those guys were homegrown. They're from Louisville, and it was pretty amazing, I think, collection of coaches and athletes during that period of time.
Really interesting to see how it impacted the larger swimming community, as well as so many national teamers, even to this day, have come out of the Lakeside program. And Mike obviously has continued that tradition. Your sister ended up being a coach for a very long time. And so the Lakeside tradition really impacted your family, it sounds like.
Well, there's no question, and there was some great mentoring that went on. Mary T. Maher was one of my sister Dorsey's mentors. And it's kind of like people would just take them under their wing and help them emerge. Tori Treese as well was several years older than Dorsey, and they were great influences on her. The whole Maher family, there was one Peggy that was in between Mary T. and Dorsey's age, and she was a big influence. In fact, she went to Texas, a couple of years ahead of my sister. So I think there was just a lot of that. It's just like developing that culture got established, and then it just kind of rolled. People wanted to find national level success like some of their friends and their, mentors that preceded them. So, I give a lot of credit first to Denny Persley for, when he came in, we were somewhat of a broken team. Some of them had split off and formed another club. There were a lot of just mostly guys at the time, and we needed his leadership. We needed him to pick us up and make us believe that we were something. And then again, he brought on Bill Peak, who unfortunately passed away, way too early, too young. He was a tremendous coach. These guys are some of the best coaches in the world, in my opinion. And to see the things that they, the talent that they developed, and not just at the very top end, but just all the way through the ranks. And, that was back in the day when I grew up, when a state championship was a big deal, you got really, really fired up for it, and, we wanted to dominate the state records and all that kind of stuff. When I was coaching the age groupers, it was just a lot of fun. And that was probably one of the biggest things is we had fun. We had some crazy times around meets as coaches, just doing fun things. I mean, I could tell you story after story of things that we did to fire up our kids. And I just think it was just a terrific atmosphere that had been created, and it just carried on through several generations of coach. And yeah, Mike DeBoer's doing an unbelievable job. It has been for a number of years down there. So what a great place to grow up, and what a great team and history to be a part of.
There's no doubt, and that rich cultural history in Louisville has really endured as far as swimming goes. I had the pleasure of having Amy Albiero on earlier this year, and she said that when she and Arthur moved there, they really tapped into that culture, and they're trying to build a similar vein at Cardinal, and it's kind of neat to watch. It's great, as you said, a modest city like Louisville having some really exceptional club teams in the mix.
Yeah, it's been that way for a long time, and it's really just a neat thing. And again, modest population. You got your typical summer leagues and country clubs, like most areas do, but it's not like the size of the DC area with their mega summer league thing. But yeah, I think it's just enough, and just good people being in place to help lead and guide the athletes through. It's you're right. It's pretty incredible to think back upon, but just something that I know I'm proud to be a part of, and love. Whenever there's a reunion, I haven't been able to get back to too many of them, but it's pretty amazing to walk into a room and have Olympians and gold medalists and national team coaches, and again, all from Louisville too, which is really special.
So in those early days, Coach, when you just started assistant coaching, who were some of the people that you were looking up to and that helped develop your philosophy early on?
Well, the first was Bill Peak, who hired me. Denny Persley had left for Cincinnati at the time, and so Bill Peak moved up, and Bill was the one that coached Mary T to the jaw-dropping world records. Obviously, Denny did a tremendous amount to prepare her to that point. But Bill was actually the coach in Brown Deer, Wisconsin, at Schrader, where she set those ridiculous world records. In fact, I was there. He took me along as his assistant, his massage therapist, and I'd never given massage in my life. and here I am. Not only did I give him, I was on the opening of Wide World of Sports. The show opened with this zoom in of my hands giving a massage, and then it opened up, and there I am, working on one of the Lakeside athletes, and I probably still didn't appreciate it enough then, and it was one of the few times I've been in an athletic setting where after a performance, there would be a stunned silence before the applause erupted, because people just gasped at how fast Mary T had swung. And I'll remember that for the rest of my life. So, but anyway, Bill Peak was just an amazing coach. And of course, Denny coached me, so I learned a lot from him. And I got to coach under Bill. And it was neat because we'd have a lot of great people from like Nashville, before, with Ron Young and different people, leading up to the current coaching staff there, which is obviously great. And John's been there for years, but, Dynamo would come up or some Atlanta. And of course, the great Marlins teams, that were kind of Lakeside's rivals for many years. So I got to know a lot of, really, really quality coaches at the time. And, it just took off from there, and at the very end, I got to coach with my best friend at the time, Scott Miller, who in his own right was an amazing coach. He ended up getting out and going into, business on his own, but he was an amazing coach. And the fact that I got to do that for several years with somebody that was really close to me, and we hung out, did stuff, a lot, was just an amazing part of my life, I think. And but then I went to Southern Illinois, and then through Doug Ingram, who was kind of like Jim Woods before Jim Wood, right, in USA Swimming. Man, it opened up even more. I'm going to meet Don Gambrell at Alabama and Richard Quick and all these great coaches, and he's the one that inspired me to get involved more in USA Swimming, and then eventually ASCA. And I was a young coach trying to get onto the ASCA board at a really early age, and at one point I was an assistant coach. That was kind of unheard of back then.
Yeah.
And then I tried to get on. USA Swimming had all the different organizational groups. One of them was the OIO, and you're talking all the the big name coaches. And I had this goal to get on to OIO because I love the whole thought process of the international scene and how you get athletes there and how it works, whatever. And so, through, first Doug and then Denny being the national team coach, I got to sort of slip into some of these meetings at one point before I was even officially on there at one brief point, but and just get to soak up all that knowledge and see some really good arguments, occasionally some fights, and even back in the day when there was some contention between Tom Jager, Matt Biondi, and Denny, and some of the USA Swimming people, as these guys were starting to maybe the early emergence of pros, right? Yeah. Professional swimming, and man, it was kind of a crazy time, but so yeah, my group expanded from my Louisville coaches to, I can't tell you how much I appreciated guys like Richard Quick, stopping with me on the deck, or Mark Schubert, and just sharing knowledge, and that's why I love to go to the ASCA clinics all the time, because what a great environment, right? Not only could you listen to talks from the greats in the history of our sport, but then you go out in the lobby and you chat with them, or you're sitting in the bar and you have a drink with somebody, and you learn so much, about, not only what's going on now, but even the history, which I think really helps you, coach to the future, knowing the history. And so that was a big part of it. I think my first ASCA clinic, I was sold. I'm like, I'm going to this thing for the rest of my life, right? So I love that kind of thing. And yeah, I have so many coaches to thank for helping me grow and providing me with some great knowledge and inspiration.
You were very fortunate to be in some really good places at the right time as an athlete and an age group swimmer, being at Lakeside and then getting hooked into all those great coaches. Can you talk to our younger coaches, Jimmy, about why it's so important to have a mentor?
Yeah, I think it's important to have people that you can, not only ask and lean on for information, but bounce off ideas, or, share frustrations, help you figure things out, right? I remember one of my early years at Northwestern as a head coach. We had a bad year, and I just couldn't figure it out, and I had my workout sheets, and I remember going into Bob Grosseth, who ended up being not only a very, very close friend, still is, and also a mentor, and sitting with him in frustration, going, what I need to do, I need to do more volume, I need to do more of this, and I was thinking I was going to spend a month, evaluating all my practices and coming up with all this data, and he calmed me down a little bit, and talk to me about other things, not that what I was thinking about doing wouldn't help, but what about some of the other things like athlete relations and talking to them about other things in their life, and they're college students, they have a lot going on. And so I think having those kind of conversations with mentors really helps, right? Because, and you think of it now after you've been coaching for a while, the experiences you have are so vast after a while, and I shouldn't say you've come across everything, because here we are in COVID pandemic, and this is something we've never dealt with, right? But at some point you've probably seen or faced most different issues with athletes or parents, and that kind of thing, and you could sort of pull back and rely on some of those experiences to help you going forward. But when you're younger, you don't have those to lean on, and so I think having mentors is just a tremendous thing. I really do. And I'm impressed now, because there seems to be an understanding of that within some of our communities. Like, for instance, College Swim Coaches Association has established a mentor program, and I've been involved in it from the first year with Joel and Gene Fleck and some of the other coaches that helped organize that. And I think it's tremendous. I really do. we get on a call once a month and we talk, and they have coaches at different levels or experiences within each group. And, what a great thing. I mean, I've gotten to know several coaches in the last 3 years that I would not have gotten to know otherwise. And I consider them to be friends, and I would help them out and, however, whenever that they needed, and I've learned from them too, which is one of the reasons that I got into it. So I think it's so important. And I think, I feel for some of those coaches that maybe they're in smaller areas, or maybe they're in situations where, they don't have a lot of funding to kind of help them go and meet coaches. But, hopefully over time, everybody will have that opportunity somehow, some way, but I think getting involved in ASCA, and I know that Bill Wadley is really fired up to help that as well, help funnel that, and get coaches excited about, sharing and introducing and meeting other people. And I think that's huge. I really do. So,
Absolutely. And I can tell, in the short time that I've been on the board with you, that this is a group that seminally cares about moving the sport forward and are willing to reach out to the younger coaches, where we might not have seen that a lot early on in my career in the early 2000s. It was hard. Unless you were on the pool deck at nationals or trials, it was hard for a lot of us to get into those circles. So I look at this ASCA board, and I'm really enthused by the level of effort that these folks have. On the flip side of having a great mentor, and why that's so important, as a head coach, a coach who coached in the Big Ten for over 20 years, what are you looking for in your assistant coaches?
Probably number one is just enthusiasm, and love of the sport. Like, to me, looking back, I, like a lot of coaches, my age, have hired a number of different assistants over the years, and experience is great, knowledge is great, but I would put enthusiasm and just, it sounds corny, almost a zest for life above any of that other stuff, because if a young coach has the right attitude and the right approach, and also is willing to do whatever, right? And I mean whatever, like that's what you want. You don't want somebody that's already got themselves at a certain level and think that they're above certain things. I just don't think in our sport, or maybe any sport, you can afford to do that unless for some reason you already have some huge stature. You're a former Heisman Trophy winner and you expect to be a head coach right away, or something like that. So, I just, I think if a coach has those qualities right away, then they'll learn fast. You could teach them, and maybe in some ways, depending on the program you're in, maybe teaching them some of your ways is a good thing, instead of coming in with already preconceived ideas. So that's what I look for, because in most cases I've been hiring young coaches. I've not ran a combined Division I staff where I've got 4 positions, and maybe in some cases I could hire somebody, 1 or 2 pretty high salaries, and bring in somebody that's got 10 or 12, whatever years of experience. So, but even then, I would almost put, still love of the sport above anything else.
I think that's so important. And when I look at our age group coaches at the club level, I want somebody who's excited to be at practice every day. And so I would agree. I think that's so incredibly important. And before we get into some of the nuts and bolts about what you would change about some of the things you did early in your career, I wanted to ask you, what do you think has changed most about our sport, our approach to the sport in the last 25 years?
Probably an emphasis on athleticism and you know, just becoming, again, more of an athlete, both in and out of the pool. And I think, you know, there were certainly a lot of swimmers that, and not everybody. I mean, I played other sports growing up, and not extensively or not very long into my life, because I, you know, right or wrong, I decided swimming was what I wanted the most, and I kept steering towards it, and eventually giving up other things. But you know, I have noticed, and I've noticed it even with sons or daughters of coaches, which some people might be surprised about, that they had a low key, younger, you know, early swimming years approach to their children. And in some cases they were not, the most, like, had the best attendance and most committed and all that kind of stuff. I've got several friends, and you probably know some of them as well, that they just let their children grow into the sport, and not only grow as an athlete, but their interest, grow, and let them get like sucked into it, as opposed to the parent pushing them into it. And in some cases, some of these athletes were late starters in the sport and ended up being Division I swimmers, and having some great success. So that taught me a lot. Not that there's something wrong with starting the sport early. There's a great, I think it's called Pursuit of Excellence. It's a film that I just watched. It's on Hulu, and it's some guys that studied great athletes, and tried to study certain aspects of science and social, science that goes into it. So the three main athletes that they talked a lot were Wayne Gretzky and Jerry Rice and Pele. And they wanted to know a lot about their youth, how their parents were, guiding them, what kind of influence did their youth coaches have, and try to figure out how they got to be so successful. And it's really interesting, and it's kind of interesting because Gretzky talks about going back to the unstructured playtime that he thought was so key for him, and he said he'd have parents say, will you tell my Johnny, how many hours that you did and how many hours that they should devote to the sport. And he goes, whatever I did because I wanted to. Some of my friends wanted to go to a movie, and I wanted to go shoot pucks in my backyard, and my dad didn't make me do any of that. So anyway, I thought it's an interesting movie, and it makes me think again about, what's the best path. There's not one path, obviously, for people to achieve greatness, but are there some commonalities, along the way, and athletes being encouraged, and maybe having to stick to it, if they make a commitment, right? And I was a believer of that as a parent too. Like, you pay for a season of dance class or gymnastics or t-ball or whatever, then finish out that commitment, and if you want to switch to something else next season or next year, that's fine. So I think there's a nice balance of, some discipline, teaching your children to start something and finish something, but also giving them the option at some point to try different things. So anyway, those are just some of the things that I sort of think about and believe in. And I think as young coaches, right, we all want our athletes there all the time, and this and that. But and I know that's one of the hardest things probably for a club coach, and it's also important from the financial aspect, right? You got to figure out, what do you do if so and so wants to take 3 months off in the summer because they want to play baseball? Do they still pay or not pay, and whatever? And as your coach, you're like, oh, I'm going to lose Johnny or whatever. I try to find a balance, and where they could probably do both is probably the best thing. It might keep them in swimming longer, and also is going to develop other athletic skills that might make them a better swimmer later on down the road. So that was a big thing I remember in Louisville, because we lost several young boys at Lakeside that were our best athletes, swimmers, and they played ball, and eventually they chose one of the ball sports. But chances are that was going to happen at some point anyway, but we tried to kind of allow them to do both so that we could keep them in it, and keep them excited about it. So it's all interesting stuff to try to figure out, no doubt.
Well, I appreciate that. And when I think of some coaches, in our country who do things like that, I remember I was at a Grand Prix in Mesa, and it was an early long course season, probably in April. And it was the night before the first day. And I have my kids doing a set of like 6 400s descend, I think. And Coach Marsh was there with Tyler Clary, Lochte at the time. They were going down the water slide and then going into a full sprint. And all my kids I didn't hear the end of that for months, and I think you're right. When we think of Dave Salo or Dave Marsh and Sergio Lopez, certainly, they have a really keen appreciation for play and what play means and how it works into physical literacy. So I think you're right. That is a big part of what's changed in the last 25 years. What are some things that you would change about your journey specifically, maybe philosophically or programmatically, when you were a younger coach?
Well, I think a lot of what we did was really good, and partly because I had some great mentors, and we had when I was at Lakeside, we had, we were very, very insistent on a gradual progression, right? And it's interesting because we used to show, sometimes some overzealous parents, a little bit of how a lot of our athletes progressed. And we would say, all right, let's look at the 8 and under state records, right? We'd have like 2 or 3. And then you look at the 10 and under records, and we would have, 8 or 10. And then you look at the 12 and under records, and we'd have 15. You got to the senior level, Lakeside had probably had 90% of the state records, and so we said, we're not looking to see how fast Susie or Johnny can go as a 10-year-old, hopefully they're going fast, but it needs to be within this sort of structured and guided progression, right? So I think that part was really good. I think we all know so much more, especially underwater. I would love to have gone back and been able to just do some more skill stuff in the water, teaching them to be fish, teaching them to be aquatic athletes, things like that. So underwater stuff, whether kicking on their side or, whatever it might be. And if I had younger kids, probably 10 and unders, I'd play more games. But swimming, it might be, all right, we're going to race from this point to that point underwater, or you go from here and you touch that ladder, and then you got to go down to this end and touch this, and then back here, and let them go and try to, help them figure out ways to get better as fish in the water. And, I also think that especially with the guys, so here's just a brief story. And this was told to me by a good friend that many, many years ago at Santa Clara, I believe it was at that club at the time, but it was George Haynes. He would a couple days a week have separate practices for the guys and girls. And on those days, I believe the other group wasn't allowed on the deck when the one group was practicing. So he'd lock the locker room doors and coach one group and then unlock them. And supposedly he was different with the guys and the girls. The girls was very more structured and disciplined and a little more distance oriented. And the guys had a lot more playtime and goofing around and, whatever. And so George was smart enough to figure that out, right? Keep the guys engaged. They need to compete and they need to play a little bit and things like that. So, a vision going back in the old 6-lane short course pool, whatever, I might have them do more of swimming down and then come back and do 10 jumps to try to see how close you get to the flags. And, maybe if I could lower the flags, depending on the size of the kids, maybe I'd lower them to see, have it where they could get there. And then, if you have some type of a wall where they could do pullouts, and you do so many pullouts, maybe I'd have jump rope on the deck and they'd swim so many, repeats, and they'd get out and they jump rope, and then they come back and they do. So I think I would probably have them just doing more active stuff, and obviously still teaching. Teaching would still be the basis of it, but I do more athletic things. And I mean, Dave Salo taught us years ago, right? I mean, the heart's beating, it's going. So in some ways, when they're on the wall and the heartbeat's still going, they're still in training, in a sense, conditioning, right? And so if you keep them active and keep them moving, right? John Urbechek's keep it moving, right? They're getting that aerobic conditioning, and you're developing their cardiovascular system and so forth. It just doesn't have to all be lap swimming. And I still believe in aerobic base. We do aerobic work with our college guys, and I still believe in it. I think you could just sort of maybe disguise it a little bit, mix it up with younger kids, and still progress them so that they can be, potentially be high level swimmers nationally or internationally, of course. But I would probably do also a lot more like stroke count plus time stuff, and maybe create, records for, maybe not comparisons, but just individuals, seeing how they progress, right? If a youngster can hold a 30-second 50 free, and how many strokes does that take? And then can they do 30 seconds with fewer strokes? And then can they go 29 or 28? And, and just gauge that. So I think those things, I would probably kick more. I think there are too many athletes that come into college and they've done almost no kicking. And I think it hurts them. And I also think that if you're swimming, now it depends on much time you're in the water, but I think 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, whatever, if you're doing a lot of volume, and in some cases, some of these kids, their upper bodies aren't able to handle it, and you develop the shoulder issues and all that kind of stuff. I think, why not kick, and develop that part of their arsenal, because I think it's huge, right? Not many great swimmers get by without having a pretty good to a very good kick. So I definitely would do more of that as well.
I agree. The kick, every time I'm at a national championship, it's the first thing that I notice, when I'm watching the last heats or the final heat. I remember the sound coming off of Caleb's feet, 2016 World Championship or 2017 World Championship trials in Indy. It was like a thunder that was coming off of his feet, right? And I remember watching in finals on deck being like, that's unbelievable. So you're absolutely right. And some of the other things that you mentioned in there are, so critical, I think, this day and age, about keeping our kids engaged. And it's a great segue to my next question, which is, you're at Northwestern for a very long time, have tremendous success, and then you start a program at McKendree who didn't have a swim team before you arrived. And within 2 years, you have 200 freestyle relays that could score at some pretty big conference championships in Division I. And you have 4 guys, year 2 or 3 under 140 in the 800 free relay. Talk to us about the development of those kids, and some of the training that went into creating such huge drops relatively quickly.
Well, I appreciate that. It's very interesting because, the very first year, our pool wasn't ready like we had hoped. And so we had to travel. So basically I had 6 practices in the pool a week. Now we did dry land every day, and they did some really, really tough dry land. I mean, I remember doing dry land on a tennis court and having them just sweating like crazy. And, some people kind of losing their, whatever is left in their stomach, from the night before. And I had some strength and conditioning coaches that were, relentless. And so we got them fit, we just didn't do weren't able to do a lot of swimming, and maybe it was good. I didn't even have a miler on the team that first year, so probably good because we just didn't get enough work in. And I think even our 400 IMers went lifetime best, but just by a small margin. So I just don't think we got enough, aerobic work in. But the other stuff was really good. And, again, it kind of makes you think about, and be creative as a coach, right? You don't have, this big pool with all these lanes and all this, high-end weight equipment or resources or whatever. You just got to get creative and try to figure out. And I think also just focus on what's the most important thing, right? I used to think, okay, to really develop something, you got to do something 2-3 times a week, whatever it is, right? And when I was younger coach, I'd go crazy because I couldn't figure out how to fit all these things in, and I started seeing some other people, develop athletes with less time and less, this and that. And I talked to Ross Geary once. I remember many years ago, he was an assistant with Richard Quick, and during the Stanford women's heyday, and he went on to coach a Division III program, and they're starting in October and not training as many hours or whatever. And I remember saying, how do you get these kids to go faster? And it's like, just what you do well, right? And you just gotta select, and whatever you put on the plate, let's go with it and do it really well. So that's kind of what we did. And so it just made me think again about how to get kids going fast. I don't have to do it the way it was always done necessarily. And one of the other big reasons why I decided to take this challenge on was because it was going to create opportunities that weren't available, and especially for men, right? We all know that there's limited spots for swimmers, Division I or maybe collegiate, athletics in general. And I thought, geez, we can open up in the state of Illinois, or for anybody, a new team, and have, at least 50 eventually, spots that weren't going to be, that wouldn't have been there previously, and hopefully have a lot more guys able to pursue their dream of swimming in college. And that's what was so cool, because we got a lot of terrific young men and women, and their passion was just, their dream was to swim in college and be a part of a college team. And it didn't matter what level they were. I took anybody, and don't regret any of it, because the contributions that a lot of these people made, whether they were All-Americans or people that just hoped to score a point in the conference championship, was immeasurable, right? And I was fortunate. Like I got some really talented athletes and people that bought into the team aspect that I was trying to, develop and sell. And we had some people just blossom. I don't know how else to say it. I think it was just a great environment for them, and they saw some success, and they wanted more. And then they got a little more success, and they wanted more, right? So, I had some people that were sectional level swimmers, and in some cases, not even a sectional scorer, right? They were just in the meet, didn't come back at night ever for a second swim. And they're All-Americans now, right? And they've got, that sort of stature and that cool, thing on the resume. I'm an NCAA All-American. And what a neat thing, right? And so it's just taught me to appreciate that journey, and where kids could go, and some of the things that they can do that maybe even they didn't think that they were capable of, right? And so that's what's been really fun. And we had a guy come on our program from Iowa, not recruited much. To be honest, I wanted him on our team. I liked him. I had no idea 2 years later, he was going to be the conference swimmer of the year, and smashing records in every event that he swam, and individual relay. And that's such a neat thing, right? And I'm so thankful to be around such special young men and women that have taught me a lot and made this experience really, really cool.
Well, it's definitely on our list of schools. When we have our first college meeting with our athletes, we have it right on there, because there's some special things happening there, and it's been fun to watch. Talk to me a little bit about going from a school the size of Northwestern, the notoriety that goes with a Big Ten school, and then going to a much smaller school at McKendree and seeing that these athletes at McKendree are making a real impact on a campus community, I'm sure. Talk about how rewarding that is for you.
It's been great. What was really cool is when I came there, not only did the athletic director, he was a graduate of the school. He loved it, bled purple and all that kind of stuff. But we also had a president who was an ex-swimmer and an ex-swimming coach. And Dr. Jim Dennis, he was an assistant coach to Peter Dalen back in the 70s heydays, and recruited, many of the illustrious people, the Furness brothers, and, people like that of that era. And so there was some, with the one gentleman, of course, there was some swimming knowledge and swimming passion. So that really helped, right? And that made me believe that, okay, we could do something here. And early on, we also established that high-level academic performance that, of course, makes the president just as proud as the athletic side. And we talked about being just respected as a team on campus. We wanted to be, not that there's a contest, right? But we just wanted to be one of those teams that people looked up to. And I'm talking faculty and staff and administrators, because we do things the right way. At least that was my hope, and that was our goal. So, and again, the athletes bought into it. And early on, we had a small group of women, and they all got 4.0s. So we had what we think is the first ever team GPA of 4.0. And, I just kind of love that kind of stuff. And again, our president's beaming with things like that, accomplishments like that. And once we started getting some of those All-American, honors or selections by scoring at nationals, then people just wanted more. And I mean, I remember sitting in the bleachers at nationals the first year, and our guys are soaking it up. We just had guys there that first year. We had 2 individual swimmers and 4 relay guys, and we were 25th at nationals. And they were just absorbing everything. And it was like they were good students of the sport. And they knew what it was going to take, right? And they wanted to come back next year and do even more. And then the following year, even more. And I still remember our first conference relay win, the 200 free relay at the GOVC, which is incredibly deep and talented Division II conference championships. And I mean, that was one of the highlights of my career, just seeing these 4 guys together, win in such a big way, and going really fast, then to have our first national champions last year from the day one of nationals was just a special thing, right? And the 2 guys leading off the relay were freshmen, and the next guy was a sophomore. So young guys, and yeah, some of the splits that some of these guys were going would be pretty dang fast at Division I and in a lot of places. Not at Division I nationals, but pretty fast. And so again, I'm just proud of what they've put into it, what they've accomplished, and we're obviously not done. We haven't reached all the goals that we're striving to reach. So hopefully more to come.
Well, it's been really fun to watch, and I have one of our daughters is at Denison and swims for Greg Perini. and he has that same enthusiasm and the gleam in his eye that you have about your program and where it's going. And it's great to see because, I have another one at NC State, and she graduated from NC State, and the programs, there's as much energy in the Division III program as there is in the Division I, and those are both super exciting programs to be a part of. And I can see that you have that same enthusiasm there. So that it's really, I can appreciate that as a coach and as a dad.
Well, thanks. Well, those are two tremendous programs, and if we're compared to them at all, then that makes me very happy. And one of Greg's assistants, Kim Lloyd, is a former Northwestern swimmer.
Yes.
That I coached a little bit, so there's a connection there. And yeah, NC State, I just in all of what they did, and Braden I met many years ago. He was in Chicago briefly, and actually came and met with me about maybe helping out with our programs, but he eventually ended up moving shortly after that. But yeah, they've done. But yeah, I love trying to create energy and enthusiasm. And all I know is that the championship meets the last couple of years, we've had a blast. I mean, we've had so much fun, and not just the swimmers that are killing it by winning a lot, but some of the other swimmers, like, standing on the deck, I think some of them are about ready to have heart attacks. They're so excited. I've had to slow a couple of them down, from doing, like 50, vertical jumps and excitement. And, it's so cool to see. But we like to think that we're having fun, with it all. And it's a tough sport, it's a demanding sport, but I think you'd still do it and enjoy the journey.
I love that approach, Coach. We are ready for our quick fire questions, and I know one of them is coming up. And it's something that we're going to start here with Fitter and Faster and just get a different take on the technical application of the strokes. And we're going to start with freestyle. So I'm going to ask you how you coach the catch in freestyle.
Well, we like to talk about, or I like to use the word anchoring out front. And I'm definitely one that teaches, fingertips toward the bottom, high elbow and then high shoulder, kind of thing. And one of the things that I remind the athletes every so often is that, in swimming, you're not pulling the water, you're trying to move your body past, right, where you put your hand in. And you could think of it, I think, a lot in freestyle and in butterfly as well. But we talked to him about anchoring that hand and trying to hold water as opposed to pulling water. And I know Jonty Skinner's used some of those terms. He had talked about, I think, almost like either a kayak or canoe kind of paddle, right? Where you anchor it in and then you're going to move yourself past that point. And that's what I try to have them visualize, right? And it doesn't always work, obviously, but I think the more that we have them think about that, right, to kind of like rotate your body and kind of slide past that anchored point. So even way back at Northwestern, working with Bob Groseth, doing a lot of underwater recovery stuff that I think really helps emphasize that. Obviously, since we've all been using snorkels and things where you can sort of look at it and play with it. Sculling, I mean, I've been doing different kinds of sculling and for decades, and just trying to feel the water, right? And hopefully teaching kids that they can sort of manipulate the water with just the positioning of their hands and their arms to kind of move forward. But yeah, I'm big on that idea of anchoring, holding water, trying to move your body past that point. So I should get a kayak in there sometime. Just be like this, right? Be like this, and really, hold on to that water. And I'm sure if you have a kayak or paddle, either way, and you get it too shallow and it's going to slip off to the side, that's not good, right? You got to figure out, where your sort of points of the leverage is and how to hold it to kind of slide that canoe forward. So that's what I kind of believe in.
I like it. I have a mentor early in my coaching career at Marist College, a small mid-major Division I program, Larry Van Wagner. would say we want to be inertial, not muscular. And I love that. And it kind of falls in line with what you said there. So that's great. All right. Number 2. Does 8 minutes get broken in the 800 freestyle in Tokyo for the women's event?
I'm going to say yes. Yeah. I think it's time. I think, I think we know who we're talking about, but I think, the progression has put us to that point where we can see that happening. And, I think it's going to be real close. I think it's going to be right there, but I think she has that, capability to get under her coaches are tremendous, and, Bruce is unbelievable, and Greg is as well. And I think she's, got the people to train with, and the coaching knowledge and the coaching passion that I would bet on it.
It's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I think it's so great for our sport. So I'm excited about that. And I agree. All right. Will it take a sub 21 second performance in the men's 50 freestyle to win the gold medal?
I think it's going to be right around 21-0 or better. I really do. And I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody going under, without a doubt. I mean, again, seeing, some of the racing in the ISL and where not just Dressel, but other guys around the world, I think, that kind of mental barrier, I think when people believe that that's where they've got to be to win, and they're going to figure it out. It's like the old 4-minute mile, right? Running. Once people realize that, that's where we got to be, all sorts of people busted right through. So I think it's, I think there's going to be great swimming at the Olympics. I really do. And I can't wait, right? I just hope we get through Omaha safely, and we could move on to Tokyo safely, and all celebrate, some great performances. So this coming summer.
Okay. Best rivalry that you've ever been a part of?
In swimming specifically, or whatever?
Yes. Yep. I think you're starting one here soon with Drury. I think year after year, it's going to get closer.
Well, and University of Indy as well. I mean, there's some great teams in our conference, and it's kind of funny looking back. Like the year that I was named the coach, we didn't have the team yet, right? So I was just kind of getting the team prepared, and I remember popping into Indianapolis and watching Queens, win, and a lot of those other schools have some great performances. And I remember sitting up there thinking, good golly, there's no way we're going to get to this point, at least not in the next decade. I didn't have great hopes at the time, but those are fun rivals. They really are. And they, hopefully we're helping the rest of the GLVC and Division II raise their game a little bit. And obviously people are with me as well. I mean, in the 90s, when I was at Northwestern, Michigan, was a great rival of ours, Jim Richardson, and had a lot of respect for him as a person and what he did with the program. And most cases they were a step ahead of us, but that's okay, right? You got to look up and shoot for the top if you want to get up in that game with the elite. So that's probably the team that we would get the most fired up for back in the day. So the Big Ten was a great conference, and also had some tremendous coaches. It was a great coaching community as well. I think a lot of support and a lot of maybe not quite as cutthroat as the SEC back in the day. So,
Coach, one last question, and this one I think is really important for many of us. We're all concerned, obviously, about the future of college swimming. What are some things that you think we need to do as a sport to come together to help save some of these college programs?
Well, one thing is I think we're we've got some passion leadership, from the College Swim Coaches Association with Greg and Matt and that group. I think collaboration with ASCA and Bill Wadley has been, a big leader in college swimming throughout his career as well. So I think we can, pool our resources to kind of, help each other out. But I do agree with the fact that, your program needs to have an impact on the college campus in many different ways, right? And I think, there might be times where swimming has to give a little bit. Let's say you're in the springtime and there's, I don't know, your school's hosting a tournament or whatever, and especially nowadays, maybe where funds are limited, the department, and you see this a lot in Division 2 and 3, as you probably know, like, the whole department helps each other get through it. This doesn't happen as much in Division 1, but I think it's going to need to happen more. Or again, you're relevant to your department, you're relevant to your school, you're getting involved in the department. Maybe you're getting involved in school-wide activities or promotions. Maybe you're volunteering for committees within the university. And they're seeing that the swimming coach and the swimming team is not just there for swimming. So I think you've got to be a giver, and you guys and your team needs to, contribute to the betterment of the university. And again, not just in the pool and not just with your grades. I think now it becomes a broader thing right now. And so I think if teams do that, then it makes it tougher for administrators to say, oh, we want to, we might need to cut swimming, because we've got to save some money here and there. And they might be like, well, geez, they do this and they do this and they do this. So, how do you put a dollar value on the contributions that they give to the university and or the community, right? If there's a community fundraiser, if there's a community, event going on, maybe your team takes a Saturday morning practice off and goes and volunteers. We volunteer for an Oktoberfest here in our community. We don't get anything out of it other than, the good feeling of contributing to the community and the people. And we actually have a blast doing it, right? We're spinning wheels or grilling brats or, whatever. And it's a fun thing. So I think, coaches need to be more open to that kind of thing, maybe than they were years ago, just because, if you don't, then maybe you put your program more and more at risk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Coach, I've really appreciated your time today. Thank you for your thoughtful responses. I look forward to continuing to work with you with the ASCA. And I know we have a lot of exciting things in the mix. I wish you all the best of luck the rest of the season. Happy holidays. Hopefully you guys are going to be able to start swimming meets again soon. And thanks everybody for tuning in to our Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. This episode will be live on our website, enabled for you to download tonight at about 5 p.m. Eastern. And Coach Tierney, once again, thank you so much, and look forward to talking with you soon.
Thanks, Mike. It was a great pleasure to be here and happy to contribute in any way. And happy holidays to all of our swimming community. Let's stay safe, stay healthy, and look forward to seeing everybody on the pool deck.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Coach. And we'll look forward to all of you tuning in again next week on Coach's Corner, where we will have John T. Skinner. So that'll be a great episode. We can put up some notes on that one too. Coach, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
All the best. Take care.
Bye-bye.